This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I am Chris Bentliff, and I have Kathleen Reynolds back with us today. And Kathleen, it's great to see you. Happy New Year. And we're talking today about funding for tech startups, which is really great. We recently had an episode where we were kind of talking about the stages of organizations and the funding needs as we go from early to mid to late stage. And I have a sweet spot in my heart for tech startups. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you're seeing maybe right now that are unique in the world of tech startups and funding. I'm thinking about, we've got Web3 coming up, and we've got a lot of new SaaS projects that are coming up, and we've got kind of a I don't know. We had a lot of buzz around chat and AI 2-3 years ago, and that's kind of changed. And I'm just wondering what you're seeing out there in general in the landscape. How are you seeing some new things as we move into 2022 where tech startups are concerned?
So first of all, Happy New Year, Chris.
Thank you.
Glad to be back here. So what I'm seeing really is right now the need for these startups to be able to connect more with investors, because there seems to be at least a shift from what I've seen in terms of supply of capital for investment purposes. So VCs are looking for new companies to invest in. Ways to get additional yield. And there are, I think, a lot of companies out there that, or these new startups that need to connect with those investors. What's happening, it looks like, is that there's more money right now chasing investments than there are investments. So what's happening is that we're seeing hedge funds and VCs looking for these riskier opportunities because they're not getting the yield that they normally get. So I'm thinking that smaller startups really need to try to connect more with these available pots of capital that are out there. And that's one of the challenges I think that's coming out right now. One of the other challenges is the labor market that we're in, unfortunately. It's very tight right now. There's a lot more opportunity than there are candidates who are looking for these opportunities. And I think that startups are feeling that as well. So not just the typical businesses out there, but startups are having trouble finding the talent that they need, and at a cost that they can afford to preserve their runway. So those are some of the challenges that I think are out there right now for startups. It's really finding those pots of capital that are out there and looking for good investment opportunities, and finding the talent at a price that they can afford to preserve their runway.
Really interesting. Do you feel like the disconnect between VCs looking to invest and startups just not being available, is that a function of we're in just kind of a lull of activity where startups are concerned, or there's plenty of startups, but they're not being smart about how they could be engaging different financing relationships?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter, that it's difficult for the early stage startups to find and be connected with the capital that's out there. So one of the things that I think will be important, it was important and will continue to be important, is for these early stage companies to find the right advisors, and folks to put on their boards to connect them. So to provide introductions to these VCs that are looking for these certain opportunities, and for these hedge funds that are, setting up these SPACs and not finding the opportunities they need. And so having to scale them back and that sort of thing. So what's going to be important is for startups to align themselves with the right advisors and with the right groups of folks to provide these connections, make those introductions, and help connect them with the funding resources.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I find, and we've talked about this before here on the podcast, that a lot of startup, the creator, the innovator, they're trying to do all the things at once. And part of that, as you point out, is to preserve their runway. But they're maybe not enlisting the folks that they could be, or expanding, their network of experts on their board or on their team that could have these relationships. Tell me about some of those people that they should be engaging. Obviously, we have a big soft spot for the CFO, and obviously we see the appeal of, in the example of ProCFO Partners, there's a great big network of connected experts, diverse, lots of relationships. But who should I, if I'm listening and this is news to me, wow, I've got a startup and you're telling me there's capital out there, what should I do? Who should I have on my team that really, not just the relationships, but the skill sets that can help me take my business to the next level?
Well, they should start with some of the partners that they already have in their network. So people like who are aligned with university incubators. There are sometimes good folks who can introduce you to, a whole realm of additional advisors, of VCs, angel investors, if you're really early stage. So a lot, whoever they are aligned with in terms of their university networks and incubators, that's certainly a good place to start. Other organizations are, some of the startup organizations that sort of exist out there. Get on, or get connected with the Y Combinator. Those types of resources that are there for you. Sometimes you need to be a squeaky wheel, but get involved in those organizations and see what resources they can offer. Another thing that I found that was kind of interesting was leveraging banking relationships. So some of the startups that I've worked with were looking at, they started off with a certain bank just because it was easy, whatever that was, the Chase and Citigroups of the world. But then have found over time that there are actually banks that are sort of more geared towards working with startups. So those banks can also offer introductions on their own to their networks. So, these banks will be working with qualified, institutional investors, will be working with VCs and angel investors on a banking level, and may provide introductions. So they'll be the conduit for the startup who has a sort of a basic banking relationship, but could be starting to book sales and that sort of thing. And the bank can provide that introduction to some of those untapped resources of capital that exist out there through their own private clients and others.
So part of what I'm hearing you say when you talk about kind of this power of introduction is, diversify your network. Sometimes, as you point out, the first opportunity you get, or that you just thought you'd go to, could be 3 steps away from the real one, the right one. But if you don't have the network, and if you don't have the investigative sort of skill sets, or somebody on your team who does have that, you could be missing out on those opportunities. Is that, I don't know, there's an experience and there's an expertise, but there's also that skill set of digging deeper, finding the right partner, or looking into the pros and cons of this or that. And I feel like that's another one of those components of having the right advisors or the right strategic kind of consultants on your team. Do you agree?
Yes, no, I definitely do. Some of the pitfalls that I've seen as a result of not having sort of the right advisors is, first of all, a complacency. So some advisors just want the cachet, I hate to say it, of working with a startup. And so will, maybe not go out of their way so much to provide introductions, or maybe they've sort of overrepresented their network. And so, but they want to be a part of this, sort of exciting or sexy, industry. But they're not really the right, they'll be your cheerleader, and they may have expertise in certain areas that they can, advise you from a company standpoint, but they might not be so good in terms of helping you build your network. And you really have to weigh the folks you have that, as advisors, and what you expect sort of to get out of them. I hate to put it that way, but that's how it works, right? The advisor is there to help in many different ways. And as a startup founder, you need to gauge, what exactly are your expectations, and what exactly are you going to be getting out of each relationship? And if you find that not a lot of these relationships are resulting in the right introductions or connections to capital, connections to business as well, then you have to really reevaluate what are you getting out of these relationships. And there could be some good things, don't get me wrong. You might have someone might have expertise in pricing, for example, which is, a really refined skill set. And so great, but then, you have to consider what networks are provided and being given freely through these relationships that you have with advisors and board members.
That is great advice. And I feel like that ability, that relationship management experience and skill set is often outside the skill set of the founder and they're so excited or energized, or there's so much inertia around one relationship that you might not even stop to second guess or to ask critical questions around.
Yeah. And it's understandable. You start to form a loyalty, right, to your early backers and your early advisors, and that's all good. And there's the thing that I think is interesting that founders may learn over time, but not all of them do, is that sometimes a relationship is the right relationship for that point in time. But then as you grow or you're changing or you pivot, that relationship may no longer be the best for you, or may not be providing what you need at that time. And so you might need to sort of, to use the same word, pivot away from that relationship, or focus less on that relationship and try to find, the new ones that are going to help you with whatever it is that you're at the stage you're at now. So you kind of have to think about these relationships as, are they meeting your company at the stage of growth or the pivot that you're at that time? And it's hard to do that. It's not always easy to do that. But that's one of the things that certainly the lead founder, if not, more than that person, but the founders in general should be focusing on too.
That's a great perspective too, because not just functionally sort of moving away from those relationships, as you point out, there can be a loyalty that's involved, but understanding when you're on that precipice, that again gets into that idea of expertise. And if this is my first kind of startup, I might not realize that it's time, or I might be trying to pull this thing with me or make more of this thing than it could be. And it was exactly what I needed last year or in our last sort of stage, but it isn't now. I feel like that's a part of kind of relationship management in the runway. Tell me more about, so how do I manage the whole runway financially, but also relationship wise? I don't know. Is there a philosophy that I can be applying, or do I again just need to kind of be counting on some experts to walk me through that, who've been through this before? What's some perspective I can have if I'm a founder?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it's kind of a difficult one. But there, I have the experience with one startup where, I was talking about complacency before, and the opposite sort of happened, where a board member actually wound up becoming the functional head of the company and sort of, eating away at the CEO's power. And, that was something that I had brought up on more than one occasion. And unfortunately, it turned out that this pretty much happened. So as a founder, it's almost like you really have to be laser focused on your vision, laser focused on the resources you need to get there. So not just financial, but relationship wise. Who is going to provide you with the right guidance, the right introductions, the right network, the right business acumen to help you get there, and be aware of the changing dynamic. It's sort of hard, right? Of the advisor circle that you've developed, around your company. I don't know about philosophy, but I would say that what I described is really the way a founder kind of has to think. It's, where is what stage am I at? Is my company at? Are my advisors at that stage at the right stage to help me? Do they have the right skill set, the right connections, et cetera? Are they meeting me where my company is at? And if not, I need to expand. I need to start talking to more people and figure out, through the resources I mentioned earlier, who else I need to bring in to kind of help me at where I'm at, where my company's at. And, again, be observant of the sort of strong personalities in your advisor circle who might kind of start to overstep. This is something that happens, and it's something to manage. When you're talking about relationship management, it's something to manage, and it's hard because a lot of times these advisors, as you go through funding rounds, have invested a lot of money in the company, and so they want a larger and larger say in how it's run and in the decision making in general, and that becomes difficult to manage. So as a founder, you really have to have that ability to sort of stand up to that in a way, right? And have that laser focus on your vision and make sure that everybody is still behind you in that vision. But really leverage your relationships to do that and, prevent the company from, kind of going on the route with one advisor, as opposed to following the vision that the founders had for the company, and even the pivot if it turns out that you do need to pivot. So it's I hate to make it sound so dire, but you really have to watch your relationships and nurture them, closely for both complacency and the flip side of the coin.
Yeah, it's such valuable advice and perspective, and it's almost insidious. Like you don't realize sometimes that and friction helps the work. So you want people who will challenge and debate,
absolutely
disagree.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily know sometimes when that's flipped into a controlling mechanism or something even more toxic. And with all the other things going on in the founder's, reality, that part can sometimes, by the time you realize it's happening, the fire has started and getting a little bit out of control. That's tricky.
Yeah. No, it is. And that's why, as we were saying before, relationships are so important. You really have to trust the folks you've surrounded yourself with, as advisors and board members, and they might change over time. And founders have to be open to that and sort of ready for it. Yeah. But they can rely also on other trusted advisors. So like, of course, to toot our own horn, your CFO.
Yeah.
Because your CFO is there to, not just to be the number cruncher, right? Or be your bank relationship manager, but also to point out risks. We are also risk managers, and we're going to point out risks when we see them. And especially if it looks like it could be something that is a blind spot. So, we are prepared to have those difficult conversations with business owners and founders, because that's our job, is really to point out the blind spots, point out the risks. And sometimes those conversations are difficult. But if you really form a partnership with your CFO, as a founder or a business owner, and come to get that trust, then you can have those conversations, and that hopefully will help to head any issues off at the pass before they come to pass, right?
Hey, if I'm a tech startup founder right now, and I've been listening to this episode or watching this video, this has been a great big dose of sort of healthy reality for me. And I would feel energized to start examining some of these things or just taking some inventory on what's going on, because it's just been such great sort of actionable, practical, tactical advice that you've shared with us this morning, Kathleen. And I'm really grateful for your generosity with that. It's been great to talk to you again. I can't wait to have you back again, and we'll dive more into this world of tech startups. And enjoy your day. Happy New Year, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.